Hi, this is Irving Steele, your host of Local Issues, and we are really excited and grateful to have a special guest come in today. She is leading the Niantic Baptist Church in Niantic, Connecticut, and has been involved in the community and spiritual work for a long time now. And so we're really excited to have Jill Harvey here as our guest. How are you, Jill?
I'm very well, thank you, Irving, and I'm delighted to be here this morning.
That's great. At the end of December, too, I'm sure it's a very busy, hectic time for you.
It is, between coming off of the Christmas season and then getting ready for all the things that happen at the beginning of a new calendar year. It's a crazy time of year, but a good one.
Good crazy, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Was there anything different or unusual this year?
Yes, we, one of our most recent things that's going on is we are now hosting the Christ Presbyterian Church of East Lyme. They use our building on Sunday afternoon and evenings. And so this year they joined us for Christmas Eve and we worshiped together. And their pastor, Ben Sheldon, preached. And it was just so wonderful to come together, these two churches, on Christmas Eve.
That's amazing. It's the first time that ever happened.
It is. Normally, every church does their own Christmas Eve service, but since it hit on Sunday this year, we decided to combine forces, and it was a real joy.
That's great. Yeah. That must have been pretty special to
have
everyone together.
It was.
I mean, that kind of ties me to one thing I was really interested in with your location right in Niantic, across from the ice cream shop, and right on Main Street. We always talk about community and how we can kind of build community and make that happen, especially in some of these times now that are maybe a little divisive and people have conflicting views. I was really curious how you're able to do that from your position and the church's position.
Well, as the minister of the church, I participate with the other clergy in the East Lyme area, and the main thing we do together is the Easter sunrise service, and other occasional things as they come up. Our church has been the host for various 12-step programs for decades, and at times we've had them going almost every night of the week. Right now we have our Monday night group, which is the oldest one, and then a Friday night group, which was somewhat newer. But we feel that because of our location, that serving as a location for community events is an important part of our ministry in the town. And of course, in the summer, we host the Theater Under the Shell group for their rehearsals as they get ready for their season at the band Shell, and other things like that during the year. So that is an important part of our ministry.
Definitely.
Our participation in the community of Niantic.
And that's how we first were connected too, was through Theater Under the Shell, and that we were using your location there as perfect, as central, we could use it, and so grateful to have a spot to practice and perform theater at.
And we're happy to support the theater in that way. Another one of our community ministries that I think a lot of folks probably are familiar with is Cocoa and Cookies at the Light Parade. And we've done that for decades. And we were joined this year by our brothers and sisters from Christ Presbyterian Church. So again, it was fun.
So you have a decent amount of interaction and collaboration with other churches around
Well,
the
we
town.
do. Whenever we can, we do.
That's great.
Yeah.
And when did you first come to the Niantic Baptist Church?
Well, that's I have a twofold answer to that question. I first came to Niantic Baptist Church as the interim pastor in 2001, and I was there for a year and a half, and then I went on, to another pastorate. I was called back to the church as its settled pastor in 2008. I started on January 1st in 2008, so I'm just coming up on what will be my 16th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
How does it feel? Time flies?
Yes, I never expected to be in one place quite this long, and what's really exciting is that 1 week from today, I will officially be the pastor of longest tenure in the entire history of the church.
And that's
something pretty cool.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's a deadline. It's an honor I never, expected, but it's a pretty neat thing.
Because when did the church start?
The church was founded in 1843,
Okay.
The building you see now on the corner there actually burned in 1866 and was rebuilt in 1867. And that's why you'll see a couple different dates on our historical plaque. But yeah, that's going back a really long way.
That's amazing. And the longest serving.
I will be the longest serving. I just got to make it one more week. And I am the 49th or the 50th pastor of the church, depending how you count. Apparently they had one pastor who had to leave 3 months later due to health reasons, so they weren't sure if they were, my historian wasn't quite sure if we should count him. But I'm very privileged to be the pastor of this wonderful, wonderful church.
That's amazing. What do you attribute to some of your success of being the almost longest serving pastor there?
Gosh, I don't know. It's such a wonderful congregation. We have very strong lay leadership. And I'm a team person. So working with my lay leadership, I let them do what they're good at, and I do what I'm good at, and it seems to work for all of us. And I think probably one of the first things I did when I came to the church in 2008 is we started talking about restructuring our church government. And I went out on a limb and proposed something really radical, is that we do away with all our boards and committees and just have one group. We had too many meetings, and so the banner was ministry, not meetings. And we did that, and it's been quite successful over the years. And I think people got new energy when they weren't having to go to meetings all the time, and instead they could just do various ministry projects or various service around the church. But I can't take all the credit. It's just a wonderful congregation. We are a small church, but we try to be the best small church we can be.
And that makes a huge difference if you focus on action as opposed to just talking of different things.
Exactly.
And I'm sure the congregation has been really appreciative of that.
They have been. And we were also very fortunate. The American Baptist Churches of USA had a ministry project going, a grant program right after I started in 2008, and we were able to enroll in that and receive a grant to launch a ministry down at the Bridebrook Rehabilitation Center.
Oh, nice.
We did that for many years now. Sadly, all the ministry outreach got shut down during the pandemic. And so now we're back to rebuilding that program, and we do have some new things we're doing. So again, it's a church that's very focused on reaching out and serving.
That's great. And right before we started, you alluded to some of your work with technology and Zoom, that a new avenue, new opportunity to reach even more people, maybe.
Well, we hope so. We have actually gained a couple new people through Zoom, and it's been a real blessing for our oldest members who, just it's hard for them to get out. It used to be in the winter, if you had a blizzard, you had to, are we going to cancel church? And now we just put out the word, it's all on Zoom today. Nobody has to leave home. And instead of 6 people showing up, we'll get 46 that show up. So even though it was very challenging at the beginning, it's been a real blessing for us. And I think for the people in our congregation as well.
Yeah, a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah, exactly. It gives everyone flexibility. There are some challenges, to sort of running that meeting while we're online, and, internet issues and things like that. We're always learning how to improve it.
That's great.
It's been good. And when the pandemic hit, I had never even heard of Zoom. I didn't know what it was. 2 weeks later, I was up and running.
Yeah.
So
I think it changed the whole world.
I think it did change the world, and I think the guys that started Zoom never planned on doing that. But wow. Yeah.
Serendipity is a part of life, isn't it?
It's very much a part of life, although in the church we don't call it serendipity, we call it providence. We always say, we got pointed in the right direction to do something that we might not have done. So even though the pandemic was a very difficult time for everybody, not just for churches, there were also a lot of blessings that came out of it, and that was one of them.
Definitely. And I'm curious too about maybe taking a step back, some of your own personal previous history of kind of how you found yourself involved with the church and took this path of church leadership.
Well, I had a real Moses call, which is to say, like Moses, when God came knocking on my door, I said, no, you don't mean me. Because, Moses, his reaction to the burning bush was, send my brother Aaron. I was I had not finished my bachelor's degree. I have to give you a little history. I never finished my bachelor's degree. The first time around, I majored in drop ad and I minored in spending my father's money. So in my 30s, I went back to school to finish my bachelor's degree, and I was looking for a class that met on Tuesday and Thursday morning and was cross-indexed for women's studies. And somebody said, well, take this class on women's spirituality. It's taught by the Catholic chaplain. She's really good. And it hit all the marks, so I did. And my pastor at the time, this was up in Massachusetts, got the bright idea that I needed to do a sermon based on what I had learned in that class. And I was not interested, but he announced it anyway. So I did this sermon, and everybody started saying, oh, are you thinking of going into ministry? And I was like, no way. Not me, because I didn't really grow up in the church. You know, my family was, I call it cultural Christianity. You're a Christian because you're not specifically something else. You know, like we weren't anti-church. My mom had been an active member until my dad bought her golf clubs, and you know, so I didn't really grow up with that in the house. So anyway, I preached this sermon, and off I went for the summer. And but God kept sort of poking at me. And so I received what I thought was wonderful advice I could live with from another church member who was at seminary. He said, Jill, if you think God is calling you into the ordained ministry, my advice is to do everything in your power to avoid it. And I thought, yeah, I can make that work. So I took some biblical studies classes at Smith to prove I wouldn't be any good at it and wouldn't like it, and well, that didn't work. And I got, through my Smith College connections, got to go to a conference by the Lilly Foundation down at Vanderbilt Seminary. And, you know, I thought I'd be a real fish out of water, and I wasn't. So I finally kind of threw up my hands and said, all right, I'll do it. And I've never looked back.
Wow.
And,
Incredible.
you know, that's why that advice was so great, because if you do everything in your power to avoid what God is telling you to do and you wind up there anyway, you got no doubt. You just set your course and stay on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean it's always been easy, but it's always been very fulfilling and rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible story.
And that was back in the 90s. So I've been in ministry now. I've ordained 26 years, been in ministry longer than that as a lay person. And it's just been a wonderful experience overall.
That's great. And it's so lucky down in Niantic, too, that it's a walkable community. If you're living down there, you can walk towards the church.
It's a wonderful community, and my husband and I live on Hope Street. We are almost behind the church.
Oh, perfect.
So we're actually behind Crescent Point Rehabilitation Center, so we can literally hop the stone wall.
Perfect.
And almost be in the church's backyard. So yes, very convenient and lovely.
And you've seen, I'm sure, a lot of change since 2008.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And even before.
There has been a lot of change in the town, in the church, you know. And but one thing that has not, for years I've been acquainted with Niantic Baptist Church, is the heart of the church and the wonderful, strong lay leadership that's there, and the generosity of the people. All we have to do is ask, and people just give and give and give. They're just amazing.
And you have a unique perspective on generosity, I believe. Is that true?
I like to think so.
Yeah.
I was a facilitator for something called the Generosity Project, which was with American Baptist Churches USA.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about generosity and stewardship at my church, we don't talk about money. I kind of start off the stewardship campaign by saying, okay, we got a budget, we got bills to pay. Now we're done talking about money. Now we're going to talk about generosity and stewardship. And I really try and talk about it as our response to God's love in our life and our sharing of what God has given us for that very purpose. And my churches, they're wonderful. I think they've been listening all these years, and now they just do it. I mean, they were probably generous people before I got there, but I think we've all grown together in that regard.
And you also talk a little bit about scarcity and abundance as well.
Exactly, scarcity and abundance. The Bible tells us that God wants us to live an abundant life, but not everybody does. And so to those of us who have received much, much is expected. And a big expectation, in my opinion, is that we share what we have. But I find some of the most generous people are not the wealthiest. They are the people that appreciate what it means to have what they need. And it's not excess when they give. They give out of their sustenance, not their excess.
Mm-hmm.
That's true generosity.
That's true generosity. And have
It
what
really
they
is.
need instead of what maybe they always want.
Exactly.
Huge difference.
Exactly.
Mm.
That's a great blessing that I've enjoyed at this church.
That's wonderful. And I guess in a larger trend, a lot of these billionaires with their pledge of giving away 99% of their money when they pass away. And
I think that's pretty cool. They should give it away while they're alive. I mean, maybe more of it than they do.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I don't know of anyone who ever went broke by being generous. Maybe temporarily, but in the grand scheme. God provides for us, and we hopefully respond by providing for others.
Yeah, and it's such an important time, all the time, to think of that and think of generosity, but also there was just a news report that something about 1,000 families, 1,000 people now in Connecticut are homeless, and numbers that we haven't really seen before. Meanwhile, at the same time, the state is talking about a $600 million tax cut that they gave to people. So there's kind of a balance there.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious your thought on that perspective.
People don't realize how much food insecurity there is in our state, and even in towns and areas that are considered affluent, there are people who are one paycheck away from disaster. We work with Care and Share of East Lyme, and we work with the Shoreline Soup Kitchens and Pantries that all address food insecurity, and there's been a tremendous increase in who we used to refer to as the working poor. Not necessarily those who are homeless, but those who have jobs, but maybe lose a job or lose hours, or they're injured, or they just, something happens and it pushes them over the brink. And all at once they're going to the shelter, they're going to the food pantry, they're going to the community meals because they don't have enough money to pay rent and buy food. So that's a really big, big thing, and it's growing. It's been made worse since the pandemic. And we all know that the real estate market and the housing market is just nuts right now. So even in a family with a couple of paychecks, it's a real strain to afford rent.
It is.
Yeah.
And there were also reports recently at Connecticut College, people working in the cafeterias there making maybe $23, $24 an hour. And just to your point, maybe it's enough to provide some for their family, but for rent, for food for children, for other people in their household, it's not enough.
I mean, that sounds like a lot of money. Oh, $23 an hour, but it doesn't go very far given the price of rent and the price of groceries. And again, if you have kids are expensive. Medical care is out of sight. So it only takes one broken bone to throw it all off. And it takes a long time for a family in that situation to recover financially.
But it sounds like your congregation works with Care and Share and works with other great organizations like that to try and fill some of that gap of people in need.
That's something that we do. Again, as a small church, we're not able to be hands-on with a lot of things, but we can buy groceries. We can at Christmas for Care and Share, we get gift cards for teens. That's a very popular annual ministry we do. And our Christmas offering this year has been designated to the Shoreline Soup Kitchens. We used to use it to pay our oil bill. This year we said, no, we're going to use it to help people. And we received over $800 this weekend to give to Shoreline Soup Kitchens.
That's amazing.
So that's money that goes directly to help people who suffer from food insecurity. And I just think that's wonderful that we can do that. It shows that even though we're a small group, we can still have a big impact.
For sure. And what is it? The whole ripple effect of you?
It is the ripple effect.
Put a stone in water and it...
Yep. It just keeps going out. And that's so true of ministry. You never know. You never know whose life you're going to touch with your actions. On a small local scale, but also now we're connected in a global scale as well. Very much.
Everything's connected one way or another.
And we do global ministry through the American Baptist Churches of Connecticut. I have a very dear friend that I went to seminary with who is one of our American Baptist missionaries in Tijuana. And, we support her. I, of course, support her for years. But so we again, small church joining with other churches, other individuals can have a big impact.
Definitely. And I'm curious too on some of these changes down on Main Street in Niantic that almost across the street from your congregation, the Cafe Soul.
Yes.
That was a big change and move. How do you foresee that and some of these changes impacting your congregation?
I think anything that brings more people to Main Street is good for Niantic and probably good for the church. Something we're trying to do more intentionally now is raise our profile on Main Street so that more people are aware of the Niantic Baptist Church. And I used to joke for years, I'd say, we're the church across the street from Frosty Treat. What I wanted it to be is Frosty Treat is the ice cream place across from the church.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten there yet. Of course, now it's Tony D's. But, it's that whole idea of being a visible force in the community. And we're working on it.
Yeah. And that was one thing I was impressed. You alluded to it a little bit when we had our theater practices there, that it felt like almost every single night there was maybe AA there, there was 12-step there another night. I think you also have a meditation group.
We did for a while. Those groups, again, right now we have the 2 AA groups meeting. Some of the other groups have moved to a different location. But we're always open to hosting members of the community if we can help, And that's kind of how we got into the relationship with Christ Presbyterian Church. They had a need. They were outgrowing the pastor's living room. And we were so excited to be able to encourage and host a brand new church in town. How cool is that we have a new church?
Yeah,
so
that's great.
Yeah.
So if there's people in the community who have ideas or want to organize different things, you welcome them to reach out to you?
Absolutely. We hear from people, via email all the time. We have a website. We have a Facebook page. And we're pretty easy to find.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I also heard that humor also might be part of your repertoire.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Guilty as charged. I am a member of the Fellowship of Merry Christians, which is a group all over the world dedicated to bringing the joy back to worship, because we think the kind of the old 1950s version of worship is serious and you have to be dour and you have to behave yourself in church and you must never laugh. Now that's for the birds. The good news of Jesus Christ is good news, so it should make us happy, it should make us smile. And the Fellowship of Merry Christians is responsible for something called Holy Humor Sunday, which is the Sunday after Easter. It's normally called Low Sunday. A lot of people skip church the Sunday after Easter. So we have a special service, a Holy Humor Sunday service, and this was done in medieval times, where the week after Easter was a time for practical jokes and picnics and parties. So we do kind of crazy stuff. We've done a baseball-themed service. We've done gardening. We've done Noah's Ark. We've come in our pajamas. The year after that, we all came in formal wear. We were putting on the Ritz. And the service has a theme, and we have a lot of fun with it. Now, this year's theme is going to be Food, Glorious Food.
Food, glorious
So
food.
I'll tell you, the Sunday after Easter, the first Sunday in April, Food, Glorious Food.
That's something to look forward to.
I'm guilty as charged, and I started this there when I was there as the interim minister, and then I was gone for many years. They made the next pastor do it anyway, so that will be my legacy. But we have a lot of joy. Church should not bring you down. It should lift you up. And I am not above telling a joke in the pulpit to get a sermon started, and I'm not above laughing at myself when I make a mistake, which happens, of course. We're only human. So we try not to take ourselves too seriously. Mm-hmm. But we do take the gospel seriously because it's good news, and that brings us joy.
Mm-hmm. Very important. And maybe a very controversial view on this is the singing group U2. Mm-hmm. That I'm not sure if you've heard what in one of their songs they say, religion is here so we can love and hate. And
that's an interesting. No, I hadn't heard that, but I think it's true. I think there's a lot of love that gets spread through religion, and sadly there is a lot of hate that gets spread through religion. And to me, true worship is spreading the love and doing our best to counteract the hate.
Mm-hmm. And how can we better do that?
By remembering that people who are different than us aren't that different, and focusing on what we hold in common. There was a beautiful editorial in the newspaper the other day written by the Queen of Jordan about the conflict in Israel and Gaza, and she reminded us that a mother whose child has died grieves no matter which side of the divide they live on. And she's focusing on our humanity and our similarities. And many, many years ago, John Denver had a song that had a line that said, "I'll bet the Russians love their children too." That was during the Cold War. So it's remembering that families aren't that different just because they're Jewish or Muslim or Buddhist or any other variety you'd care to name. We're all humans. We're all part of that family. And I joke, within the Christian church, I say, we're just different brands of the same product. But, that's it. Humanity is just different brands of the same product. And yes, there are fanatics in every walk of life. There are evils in every walk of life. But let's focus on the good stuff. And I do think that if we would do more of that and stop worrying about, you're different than me and I don't like that, and you should change to be like me. No, how about you're different than me and that's cool. Let's enjoy each other's differences. I think the world would be a much more harmonious place.
That's a great point. And maybe through some of these interactions that we have, we can fully understand that.
I think that's the most important thing, is to keep talking with one another, keep sharing with one another, and show the love. The question I often ask in a sermon, how has God showed his love for us through his son Jesus? And how am I reflecting that in my life? How are you reflecting that in your life? St. Francis of Assisi once said, "Preach the gospel at all times, use words if necessary." In other words, your actions speak louder than words.
Much louder than words.
So, act in a loving way and people will read that. That's what I try and do. I'm not always successful, but you can only try. You can only make your best effort.
Definitely.
You have to try.
You have to try. And we just have about a minute left here. So I was curious, one maybe final thought or hope or wish that you might have, maybe both for your congregation, the community, maybe the world, moving ahead as we look into 2024.
Well, of course, the new year is an open book, a page that hasn't been written yet. We all know that churches in America are struggling, and my church is trying to figure out how to be the church of the future, how to continue to be effective in ministry here in Niantic, in state of Connecticut, and in the world. And we hope that people will join us on that journey. It's exciting, it's challenging, and it's a little terrifying too, but we know no matter what the future holds, that God is in charge. He wins in the end. We've read the end of the book. So we're excited. We're excited, and we're just going to move forward and keep doing what we do in our great little church.
That's great. Well, we're so grateful to have you on the show here today, and also grateful for all the positive work you do in the community, in our state, and in our world. So
thank you.
Thank you
It's
so
been my
much.
pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I wish you the best in the new year as well.
And also to you.
Thank you so much.